Rihanna hasn't released an album in over 8 years. She keeps saying it's coming, but fans keep waiting. And yet, she never fades away. While other celebrities rise and fall, Rihanna remains relevant and admired. Just the other day, she went completely viral for doing absolutely nothing. Grocery shopping. So what is it about her that captivates people so effortlessly? That day, Venus was actually transiting conjunct her natal sun. From teen pop star to billionaire, fashion icon, and mother of 3, let's talk about the astrology of Robyn, Rihanna, Fenty. Welcome back to Transformative Tarot. Today we are going to be talking about Rihanna, okay, the astrology of Rihanna, another celebrity chart reading. This video has actually been requested by a couple of you guys, which I was so happy about. I really appreciate all of you guys that have showed love and support on my last celebrity chart reading. I did not expect it to go this way, okay? I was so surprised seeing all the comments and to literally see my channel go from 3 subscribers, which 2 of them were me and my mom, to now 30 subscribers. It's just mind-blowing to me, and I could already get a sense of connecting with a lot of you guys in the comments. I am so excited to show you guys all of the stuff that I'm working on. So over the past couple of days, I've been researching Rihanna, and I decided, as my Capricorn self, I have my sun in Capricorn, but also the ruler of my ascendant, Venus, also in Capricorn. So in true Capricorn nature, I decided to go all in and be very ambitious about it. Maybe a little too ambitious, because now it's turned into this huge project, okay? So this video is going to be part 1 of a 4-part series. Don't ask me why I did this, because I don't even know. Don't ask me why, okay? I was like, you know what? I could just do her natal chart, or I could really do astrology. Like, I could really, give you guys a full breakdown of Rihanna and her life. So not just looking at her natal chart from a personality perspective, but really using a lot of timing techniques in order to talk about some of the major events and turning points in her life. Now, there were also some of you guys that were particularly interested in talking about Rihanna's synastry and her relationships and how that relates to astrology. So I am going to do that. We are going to be taking a look at Rihanna's love life, and we're going to be looking at not all her relationships, but I would say 4 of her relationships. So like I said, it's very ambitious, all of this, and I don't even know how I'm gonna stay sane throughout this, but I'm gonna try my best. So this is the first video of a 4-part series. I don't know where my head was at, because at this point I'm tired, okay? And actually, it's been fun. It's fun researching, Rihanna. I think she's an amazing person, and connecting all of that to the astrology. And I think that I've also learned a lot from it. So I'm very excited to show you guys what has come out of that. So I hope you're as excited as I am. Give this video a like. Make sure you subscribe so you can see a lot more content like this. Also, leave a comment to let me know if you have any more requests, if you want to see any other celebrity videos, and I'll make sure to put your request on my long list, okay? I have a long list of celebrity video IDs, so it might be a while until you'll see it, but I will go over all the celebrities on that list, okay? So I'm not sure if I'm gonna do every celebrity as in depth as I'm gonna do Rihanna, but I am definitely gonna be doing a video on every celebrity on that list that I got in my notes app, okay? I also will say that Pluto has been transiting my natal Mercury, and I've just been doing a lot of deep research on a lot of things. Like a few weeks ago, it was Leonardo da Vinci, and I got into this whole rabbit hole about his life, but now I'm researching Rihanna, so it's also kind of fun, I like this Pluto transit, and I hope that, this is the theme moving forward, okay? Pluto, we don't need any more than this. I like this, you know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, I got my dog right here. So yeah, in today's video, we are just going to be taking a look at Rihanna's natal chart. I'm going to be talking about, her personality, what stands out. We're also going to be looking at her family dynamics, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to use specific techniques that I've learned over the years, especially techniques that I've learned from Chris Brennan from the Astrology podcast, as well as Jeffrey Wolf Green and Kim Marie from Evolutionary Astrology. Okay, so I kind of combine the two in my practice. Let's get right into this video. I'm so excited. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, comment, all of that good stuff. Robyn Rihanna Fenty was born on February 20th, 1988 at 8:50 a.m. in St. Michael, Barbados, and she was raised in Bridgetown. Now, when it comes to her birth time and the Rodden rating, her chart is rated C with the original data source being unknown. So, what does that actually mean? A C rating basically stands for caution, no source. And this refers to undocumented data that's often published in magazines or journals without a clear or verified source. So, there's really no way to know for sure that this data is 100% accurate. Also, rectified times for the natal chart, meaning times that are estimated based on life events, are also placed in the C category. So this means that Rihanna's time of birth is not taken from something like a birth certificate. It's most likely rectified by an astrologer who isn't mentioned in Astrodatabank. However, I will say this: when I apply timing techniques to this chart and connect them to major life events, this time of birth actually lines up very well. So that's probably also why they have put it on Astrodatabank, but it still has a C rating. So we also have to keep in mind that the time could be different, okay? We actually don't know for sure. But for the purpose of this video, I am going to be working with this chart and this ascendant degree as accurate. Now, with this birth time, Rihanna has 15 degrees of Aries rising, which makes Mars her ruling planet. And with Aries on the ascendant, this makes Rihanna very feisty and very fiery.
That confident, powerful voice of yours.
You want to ask me about my album?
Yes, girl.
I just knew it.
Hey.
There's something about her that is driven, motivated, assertive, and a natural-born leader.
Well, obviously I'm a confident woman, so whatever I do, it's gonna be confident. Whether it's the album, perfume, lingerie, makeup, or fashion.
And this energy is also reflected in her overall life path. When I say fiery, I also mean enthusiastic. I mean excited, adventurous. Rihanna has often referred to herself as a daredevil in interviews.
The adventurous side of me, the outside side of me, the daredevil.
And honestly, this is so Aries rising with the ruler of the ascendant in Sagittarius. That combination just screams daredevil. So it's so interesting that she actually refers to herself in this way without probably being aware of the astrology that reflects the daredevil as an archetype. And so one of the most notable things about Rihanna's chart is that she has an Aries ascendant ruled by Mars, and Mars itself, the ruling planet, is also placed in a fire sign, with Aries and Sagittarius both being fire signs. And you can absolutely see that in the way that she presents herself, in her presence, in her character, and her personality. That fiery energy is very visible. Aries is associated with leadership, drive, action, courage, confidence, and spontaneity. And you can clearly see that in Rihanna. The way she moves, the way she speaks, the way she shows up in interviews and public appearances. But at the same time, there's also something very refined, very sophisticated about that rawness that she expresses. And that is really where Venus plays an important role. It softens the edge, it kind of adds a charm, it adds beauty and an aesthetic aesthetic awareness to that Aries energy. And I feel like that combination is a big part of what makes Rihanna so captivating. And what I've also noticed in watching a lot of interviews that she's done, where she's asked about her zodiac sign and she says Pisces because her sun is in Pisces. And I can just tell something about the way she says I'm a Pisces. That sign doesn't really resonate with her as much.
What sign are you?
A Pisces?
You're a Pisces. Okay.
I think that if she only knew that she had the ascendant, the moon, Venus, you know, in Aries, Jupiter in Aries, which we're gonna talk about all of these placements, by the way. But if she only knew that she had this fire energy in her chart and what that fire symbolizes, I think that she would resonate a lot more with her astrology. Rihanna also has her moon in the sign of Aries, which makes this fire energy even more dominant in her chart. And in my opinion, especially for women, the moon tends to reflect who we really are on an emotional and instinctive level and much more resonant level, whereas for men, the sun tends to be more descriptive of who they really are. And you know, it does differ for everyone because, you know, it's important to also mention that sometimes these placements in the natal chart, they describe the parents or someone else that is prominent in a person's life rather than the native itself. And that is something that we are definitely going to come back to when we talk about Rihanna's family dynamics in this video, but more so after I've gone over Rihanna more as an individual. We are going to be taking a look at her family dynamics, which is honestly just mind-blowingly amazing, by the way. Like, I was blown away when I applied evolutionary astrology's methods of seeing the family in the natal chart to Rihanna's chart. But for now, let's stay focused on Rihanna herself. Now, the moon in Rihanna's chart is placed in the 12th house. This could mean that there are issues surrounding loss, but I will say the moon being placed in the 12th house, I think that the moon for Rihanna being conjunct Venus and also being conjunct the ascendant really speaks more to how this moon is expressed rather than it being in the 12th house, although I do also see themes of that. The 12th house, for example, dealing with loss, and Rihanna at a certain point in her life pursuing her career, but really having this feeling of, I miss my family.
Are you lonely sometimes?
I wasn't lonely, but I really do miss my family and my friends.
The moon is also a signification of the family of the native, and the moon being in the 12th house, there is this sense of losing the family. She missed a lot of her hometown, her native culture, so that moon in the 12th house is definitely there and very prominent in her life. But I think that the moon being conjunct Venus as well as being conjunct the ascendant really makes this moon much more positive than it would normally be in the 12th house and in a Mars-ruled sign. Rihanna's sun is in the sign of Pisces and placed in the 11th house.
I'm a Pisces. We're always gonna be emo. That literally is the definition of our zodiac sign.
And there's definitely a side of Rihanna where she's able to be intuitive, empathic, emotional, and also quite private. And honestly, I think that this is the side of her that we don't see expressed often. And the reason why we don't often see that sun in Pisces being expressed, or that it's more kind of difficult to pick up on, we have to kind of dig deeper to be able to see it, is because the sun in Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in Aries in the 1st house, okay? And Jupiter is actually in a mutual reception with Mars, which we are going to talk about more. But for now, I kind of want to keep it simple and focus on the big three of Rihanna. But because that sun in Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in Aries, right? Jupiter in Aries is in the 1st house. Jupiter is in an angular house, meaning that it is more active. There's more activity in that area of life. So we see that Jupiter in Aries much more so expressed in terms of her character and personality, but also her life events. And that is because this Jupiter rules the sun and it also rules the ascendant ruler. So this Jupiter actually plays a very important role in Rihanna's character and life events. And that is why that sun in Pisces is actually not that easy to see, because the sun sun essentially answers to Jupiter. So that is really why that sun in Pisces is not that noticeable. Whereas for other Pisces people, sun in Pisces people, I definitely see it very clearly. But I will say that Rihanna is also very much a Pisces. Like, it is noticeable if you really, understand the sign of Pisces, because not only is she, intuitive, she is also very creative, right? Pisces has this deep sense of creative ability and creative expression, especially when the sun is in Pisces. There is this element of creative expression, and also the way that she always, aims for a sense of depth.
It's really important for me to expand, to build, to evolve, to do things bigger, better, try new aspects of creativity. Very important for me. I get bored really quickly. So if I've done it, I'm already bored of it while I'm doing it. But I'm always like, what's next? What's next? I want something better. I want something different. It doesn't necessarily have to be bigger, but maybe it's deeper. Maybe we just go deeper and explore things that aren't being discussed.
But that's not the part of herself that she shows to a lot of people, right? And is there even space to do that? Like, is that even really allowed in the industry that she's in? A lot of the times, these celebrities are expected to be a certain way. And I will say that Rihanna has definitely been a rule breaker when it comes to that. But still, there's this image that you have to keep up. You're not always allowed to show that side of yourself. You're not always allowed to be emotional, to have a deep perspective on things, to have a philosophical way of thinking about things. You know what I mean? And approaching things. So it's been more helpful for Rihanna over the years to express more so her Aries energy, because that's essentially what got her to where she is now. But also that Martian Aries energy is just so prominent that I feel like it's just natural. It's just natural for her to express that Mars, that Aries more easily. And we have to remember that the sun in Pisces answers to Jupiter. It answers to Jupiter, and Jupiter is in mutual reception to Mars, which is again the ruler of her ascendant. So these Jupiter and Mars placements, they've got a lot of importance in the chart, okay? Because they actually connect to quite some planets. Even the part of fortune is connected to this Jupiter and Mars, okay? Because the part of fortune is ruled by Venus, and Venus is again ruled by Mars. Mars is in a mutual reception with the Jupiter. So even that part of fortune connects to this whole bunch. We've got the North Node, which also is ruled by Jupiter. So what I really want to demonstrate here is that there's a reason why that sun in Pisces is not as noticeable, and we often more so see her as being such an Aries individual. Another thing that is so interesting about that sun in Pisces, and again shows this theme of that sun in Pisces not being recognizable or put on display, is that when we talk about Rihanna's spirituality, like her faith, her belief system, her religion, Pisces is also a sign that is associated with religion, spirituality, all forms of spirituality and religion. There has been times where she has spoken on her faith, on her spirituality, but this is not at all what she's known for, or what stands out most about her, or what people know. I think that a lot of people don't even really know what she believes in. She has spoken about her journey with God, and at a certain time also being disappointed in God. But what I find very interesting is that she is often depicted with an Ankh necklace. Now, the Ankh is a spiritual Egyptian symbol for vitality, and the womb, it's a symbol for feminine energy, for the goddess as well. And it's very Piscean of her to have roots in Christianity and also being raised with a certain religion and a certain belief system, but still being open to other types of spirituality. And we see that in how she wears the ankh so proudly. I could find, so many images and videos of her wearing jewelry with some type of religious symbol or, spiritual symbol. At times, she will wear the Christian cross, but I more often actually see her wearing ankh necklaces or ankh symbolism on her clothing, on her jewelry, or Egyptian symbol. She also has a tattoo of, I think it's an Egyptian goddess. I feel like that's kind of her way of expressing that sun in Pisces, right? The sun also rules the sign of Leo. We know that Leo and the sun is all about jewelry, gold, and it's so interesting that the jewelry that she wears a lot are, spiritual symbols like the Christian cross or the Egyptian ankh. So again, here we kind of see that sun in Pisces is present, but it's not on the forefront. It's not the thing that she's most well known for. If I search Rihanna talking about God, Rihanna spirituality, Rihanna faith, whatever, I don't really find a lot of content. I don't find a lot of interviews of her talking about her faith, of her talking about God, but it goes to show that sun in Pisces is not the most prominent thing about her. It's more so in the way she expresses by wearing jewelry and maybe hinting here and there. I would say that her faith, her spirituality, her religion, whatever it may be, is more so a private thing. But of course, we do know that she was raised in a Christian household. But there's also a part of her that is just very Rastafari, very much open to different forms of seeing the world, of, seeing God and what that means to her. I think she's very open-minded when it comes to that. And I really do believe that Rihanna has a deep sense of spirituality that goes beyond just religion. She doesn't seem like the type of religious person who's like, my religion is the right way and there's no other way and this is, what I believe in, so you must believe in it too. Like, she's not that fixated on that part of her life. I feel like she's more so about being open to all forms, which we can also see in the way that she runs her business. There's such a deep message there of inclusivity and wanting to include all types of people, no matter the form, no matter the shape, no matter the size, no matter the color, the skin tone, no matter the gender, no matter the background, no matter the religion. And this is really a core value of Rihanna, and that is how we see this Pisces sun being expressed as well. This is where we see this Pisces 11th house sun, that theme of inclusivity.
I want women of all shades to feel included, and all races and all cultures to be a part of this.
Mercury in Aquarius also is associated with that as well, and we're going to talk about Mercury in a bit. But the sun in the 11th house really shows that theme of wanting to include everyone, right? Pisces is also very much able to hold space. Rihanna definitely has the ability to hold space for people in such a beautiful way, and that's how she runs her business. That's reflected in her core values, and she moves with integrity when it comes to that. But to kind of bring my point home about religion and her spirituality, this is not like the part of her that she displays. This is not the part of her. There's not that much known about her spirituality, about her religious beliefs. I really do believe and feel like we usually see more clearly her ascendant, her Venus, her moon, her Mars placement. And we also tend to see her Mercury and Saturn coming through strongly in terms of how she shows up as an entrepreneur. But that sun in Pisces is still there. We have seen this sun in Pisces show up, especially during more difficult or unfortunate moments in her life, especially when she has spoken out about her father. And that also makes sense astrologically because the sun is also connected to the father figure. It is one of the symbols of the father in a native's life. And we're definitely going to be coming back to that, okay? And also when it comes to her moon placement, and if we think about like the way she emotionally expresses herself, I always think about some of her more iconic songs, for example, Breaking Dishes, or even like the whole rated R era. There's like a very raw emotional tone there. The moon dealing with emotions, the body, inner reactions, and how we express feelings. And with the moon being in Aries, there's that that fiery edge to it. It can even come across as angry, reactive, or aggressive. But with the Venus being there, I think that she expresses that aggressiveness in a very sophisticated type of way. But I also feel like underneath that anger that Rihanna has famously expressed through her music and image, there's actually some sensitivity as well. And that's where I feel the sun in Pisces comes in. It kind of sits underneath that tough exterior. Rihanna's big three alone explains so much about her personality, her emotional world, the way she moves through life. You can already see how her sun, moon, and rising sign create a very specific energy. And that's exactly why I always say your big three is the foundation of your chart. It shapes how you express yourself, how you process emotions, how others perceive you, and so much more. Especially if you're new to astrology, these three placements are the most powerful place to start. The full chart can feel so overwhelming at first. We've all been there, but your sun, moon, and rising give you a clear and grounded entry point. And so in my big three astrology readings, we look at how these placements are functioning in your natal chart and how they interact with each other, so you can understand your core patterns on a deeper level. If this breakdown of Rihanna made you curious about your own chart, or if you've noticed traits that felt similar and you want to explore why, you can book a big three astro analysis reading through clicking the link in the description box. Use code WELCOME25 at checkout for 25% off if it's your first time booking. Okay, so let's talk a bit about Rihanna's Venus in Aries placement. Obviously, she is a fashion icon. She also is very prominent in the beauty industry, and Venus is associated with beauty, fashion, makeup, as well as trends. And Venus being in Aries, I just want to really go into that notion of Venus being related to trends. And Aries you could look at as the archetype of the fire starter. And Venus being about trends, you know, Venus in Aries you could say is a trendsetter, because Aries is a cardinal sign. Aries likes to put things into action, it likes to initiate. And Venus being the planet associated with trends as well as the consensus, Venus in Aries really gives this vibe of being a trendsetter. And for a lot of people with Venus in Aries, that is actually the case. But especially for Rihanna, you know, she has been a trendsetter in so many ways. Even that whole theme of inclusivity with the sextile that's going on between Mercury and Venus, there is this really obvious theme of Rihanna being a trendsetter. But also, I mean, you must have noticed her iconic red looks. Aries is associated with the color red, and Venus is about fashion. It's a lot of the times about the clothing that you wear, the makeup that you wear. And, you know, it's interesting because she has stated that her favorite color is not even necessarily red. She said that her favorite color is green. So it's not even that this is her favorite color and that she just loves to wear red. It's literally that Aries energy coming out, and it suits her so well. Like when she wears red, it's like that's her color. The color red and Rihanna's iconic fashion looks really show that Venus and Aries placement, okay? The expression of Venus is through the sign of Aries. Aries is all about being hot, being fiery, the color red. It even has associations with blood. So especially when she wears that specific color of red that really pops out and kind of looks like blood, that tint of red looks so good on her. I can really see that, you know, that Venus and Aries in that way being manifested in her life. It not even necessarily being her favorite color. I think she likes it, you know, the color red, but it's not even her favorite color. It's the color that she likes to wear, though. It's one of the colors that she incorporates in her fashion style. There's also this quote that I wrote down that I heard her say in an interview. It says, "I love breaking the rules. That's what makes your style unique."
I love breaking rules. That's what makes your style unique and special and different.
So Rihanna, she has Mercury in Aquarius, and it's obviously sextiling Venus in Aries, and so uniqueness being such a big part of her fashion style. But Aquarius is also all about breaking the rules and rewriting the rules, and she has definitely been a rule breaker. And I think it's also that Aries energy that gives her the audacity to even try. Venus is also the planet that is associated with music and artists. And something that's also very interesting about Rihanna's music is that a lot of her music have somewhat of a sexual tint, a sexual flavor. Aries is associated with a sex drive and sex as a topic, especially the type of sex that is hot and spicy. So it's interesting that a lot of her songs are actually about sex. For example, Cockiness, okay, that song is just obvious what it's about. Obviously Sex with Me, amazing song. Rude Boy, Poured Up, Skin, Birthday Cake, Kiss It Better, S&M, right? And there's also this theme of sexual dominance as well. S&M is all about sexual dominance, and in this case especially where she kind of hints to her as the feminine representation being the dominant one. And that Venus and Aries placement is so fitting to that theme. Venus can also be about what you're attracted to, the things that you kind of enjoy and the things that are pleasurable to you. And so Aries being a sign associated with dominance, you know, Venus and Aries, there's this theme of perhaps that being her pleasure zone. If anything, right, if that's not the case in real life and it's just an expression of her music, if anything, it's still an expression in her music. And Venus is also the planet that is about music. It's harmony, the planet of harmony, musical instruments, artists, the voice, even. So her songs having such a sexual tint to them is so fitting and is yet another expression of her Venus in Aries. But not just that, she also famously has had performances that have incorporated like themes and visuals of BDSM in the performance, right? And she also has Lilith in the fifth house, which is also so interesting. The fifth house is the house of performance. It's basically the stage. It's the area of life that is the stage. It's the area of life where you go and perform. And so having Lilith there, which Lilith is also trine the ascendant, and you could say that it's more widely also trine Venus, Lilith can also be about the things that are taboo, right? It also being in Leo. Leo is also associated with the topic of sex. And so her having Lilith in Leo in the fifth house and her performances kind of having a sexual tint, or even her performances being somewhat taboo, meant for an 18 plus type of audience. I just think that's so interesting that she kind of incorporates BDSM as a form of artistic expression. I find that so interesting because the fifth house is also about your creative expression, your creative pursuits, and having Lilith there, she really combines that which is taboo into her performances, into her music, into her creative expression. But here's also the interesting thing, right? Aries is not just about sex and sexual dominance. Aries is also about murder and like weapons because it's the sign that is ruled by Mars. Traditionally, it's Mars that is associated with these things, but because Mars rules the sign of Aries, Aries automatically also gets some of those associations. And so, you know, Venus and Aries and her music also having themes of murder, like for example, Unfaithful, Man Down, right? Which is literally a song about taking someone's life. Unfaithful as well, like the song is about cheating and essentially being a cheater, but the words that she uses, like, yeah, so she says, I don't want to hurt him anymore, I don't want to take away his life, I don't want to be a murderer. Isn't that just so interesting? Like, Mars is literally the planet of murder, and also Man Down, where she talks about weapons and shots, and she really does it in a way where it's an artistic expression. And it's also, a lot of it is symbolic. Like, she, with a lot of these songs, she's kind of hinting, she's saying one thing, but she really means something deeper. For example, with Russian roulette, she also has stated in interviews that she wished that people didn't take the lyrics so literally, and that yes, it was about this very dangerous game, but that it was more of a symbolic artistic expression.
Russian roulette, when you think about the game, it's a very terrifying game. Potentially, you can get hurt in the end. And it's a lot like the game of love, because that's when feelings are involved. And that's what the song is really about. It's not about literally playing Russian roulette. This time around, I wasn't so concerned about a demographic or what people thought. I was in a very, very deep place, and I had a lot to say. And Russian roulette is a part of that expression. It's not about the game at all, which is, I wish people would get that. It's poetry.
Yeah.
And so she really does this in a beautiful way. And I feel like that's where Venus comes in. Venus allowing it to be an artistic thing, but the topic still being about murder and sex and weapons. Even in some of her music videos, where she's portrayed with weapons, it's so Venus and Aries. And we can't forget about, the acting roles that she's done. Like, there's this one movie in which she was literally in the Navy. Like,
is this some kind of exercise?
It's so funny, just all of these similar themes, all of these themes that in astrology we place under one category, and it just playing out so literally. Now, another thing where we really see that Venus in Aries is her iconic, like, Navy, Army, war vibes. Well, first of all, her fan base is actually called the Navy. And so it's very interesting as well that the 11th house, which contains Mercury, and Mercury in Aquarius, of course, Aquarius, the 11th house, dealing with audiences and can be about your fan base. The name of her fan base essentially being the Navy.
What's up, Rihanna Navy?
Mars being the ruler of Venus, but also being conjunct Saturn, the ruler of Mercury. As many of you know, Mars is associated with war, as well as armies and navies, and soldiers as well. Venus is also receiving a sextile from Mercury, and Mercury being in the 11th house, the house of your fan base, your audience. If you have one, then the 11th house is definitely where we can see your audience. And I just think it's so interesting, that sextile between Mercury and Venus, and that the name of her fan base is literally the Navy. Then another thing where we see her Venus in Aries as an expression, I think that just her having an Aries ascendant, I see a lot with Aries people. For example, I have a friend, she also has the moon in Aries. And then I also know of some rock bands, hardcore bands, screamo bands, deathcore bands, from which the artists, they actually have quite some Aries or Scorpio placements. And it's so interesting that with these people with prominent Aries placements, they have a tendency to get a lot of tattoos. The more prominent the Aries placement is, especially if it's associated with the body in some way, or the Scorpio placement as well, they tend to get a lot of tattoos. It's definitely not limited to Aries and Scorpio, like I see it with more signs, but because Mars has associations with needles and knives and stuff of that nature, and Mars ruling both Aries and Scorpio, I see a lot with people that have prominent Aries or Scorpio placements that they just have a lot of tattoos. And for Rihanna, Aries is also her ascendant sign. The ascendant rules the physical body of the native, and the moon as well can be about the physical body of the native. And so I think it's so interesting that she has Venus in Aries, the ascendant in Aries, and the moon in Aries. Venus also being an expression of beauty, an expression of art, and her just having quite some tattoos, which is really for her about an expression of art. I think that she's very conscious and aware about which tattoos she chooses, and they definitely enhance her beauty. Like, I really feel like her tattoos really suit her. Remember when she had that tattoo on her finger?
Once is love, isn't it?
Oh, shh, that's quite a good thing.
which actually became more popular because of her. And so there again, we see this theme of her being a trendsetter, even with the tattoo that she has, like on her finger. Literally, such a small detail about her life, but really shows that she, one, is a trendsetter, she's a fire starter, but also Aries being associated with tattoos and the ascendant being associated with the physical body, and Venus being there, kind of enhancing the beauty or enhancing the popularity relating to that tattoo. But also her having a tattoo of a goddess, right? Venus is the planet of goddesses. And then with the Venus Moon conjunction, which is actually the second closest conjunction in her chart. So it's actually the second strongest conjunction that she has. So that already makes it very prominent. Rihanna has often talked about how her mother has inspired her love of fashion and makeup. The moon is a significator of the mother of the native, and Venus again is the planet associated with beauty, makeup, fashion, and she has definitely given a lot of credit to her mother for her love of makeup and fashion.
The first woman I've seen put on makeup was my mom, and she's darker than I am. So to think that I would make a line that wouldn't include even her, I couldn't do it. She was the first image of beauty that I've known.
I always used to look at my mother and was like, why is she making that face when she does her makeup? Like, now when I do my makeup, I make that exact face.
And then, of course, the ruler of Venus being in the ninth house, fashion that is culturally all inclusive, right? Venus being about fashion, the ruling planet of Venus being in the ninth house of culture, and her brand, her makeup brand, her fashion brand, literally being all inclusive, especially surrounding issues of culture. Like, that is really what the brand is about. So, that Venus in Aries is just so prominent about Rihanna. I also love that trine to Lilith. Lilith in the fifth house is also, I don't know why, but I feel like Lilith in the fifth house is kind of giving me similar vibes to that Venus in Aries. Like, for some reason, they obviously are tied together by the trine, even if they're not trine exactly. Venus also loves being in the fifth house. And, I remember when I was looking at her transits, which we are going to go over in the next video of this series, that it's actually when Venus came to the fifth house of the solar return chart that she basically started becoming a celebrity. And so I don't know, there's just her having that Lilith there natally, there's definitely something about it. When I think of her Lilith placement, it gives similar vibes as when I think of her Venus and Aries placement. Like, it's kind of a similar vibe. It's really beautiful to see how she expresses that. Rihanna also has her natal Mercury in the 11th house in the sign of Aquarius, and using derivative houses, the 11th house is second house from the 10th house, making it the primary indicator of income generated through career, public reputation, and business endeavors. So in the context that I'm looking at this right now, the 10th house represents the first house of professional identity, while the 11th house reflects the revenue stream and financial returns produced by that professional activity. And it's interesting that, Mercury governs communication, messaging, marketing, branding, and information exchange. And it also represents how a business communicates with its audience and how ideas are being translated into commercial reach. And so with Mercury positioned in Aquarius, you can tell that Rihanna's marketing style is incredibly innovative, unconventional, technologically aligned, and future-oriented. Aquarius has a very strong digital component. She has found her way to use social media, online platforms, global global networks, kind of as key vehicles for her brand expression. I mean, if there's anything that we can say about Rihanna, especially how she's been showing up the last couple of years, it's that she is great at marketing, or her marketing team is great. But I really feel like with that Mercury and Aquarius, that she does give a lot of input on the marketing. So I do feel like a lot of that innovative marketing that we see, that some of that comes from Rihanna herself.
I have 100% involvement in this process. I had so much freedom in creating whatever products I wanted to make in whatever colors or shades I wanted to make them.
Mercury and Aquarius, you know, the mind has no limits. There's just an endless range of possibilities in the mind of a Mercury and Aquarius native. The 11th house also amplifies mass reach, collective engagement, communities, right? Large audiences. And so I really feel like this placement reflects Rihanna's ability to communicate with broad demographics and build a brand that stands for being all-inclusive. That's Mercury in the 11th house. I just find it so interesting that her focus and her messaging when it comes to Rihanna as an entrepreneur is not limited to a niche audience, and that actually includes a big chunk of the collective. A lot of businesses, a lot of brands, they try to fit themselves into one niche and stick with that. So by that being the norm, Rihanna actually stands out by talking to a broader audience, by allowing the brand to be more all-inclusive, because it has been normalized for other brands not to do this.
Women of all ages, all size, all skin tones, all religions, all cultures. I wanted women to feel included.
And so this becomes her way of standing out from the crowd in her business. Being unique, being innovative, going outside of the norm is very Aquarius. So yeah, that Mercury in Aquarius in the 11th house, I feel like is a great placement. And it definitely shows a lot of her life story towards the later parts of her life. So kind of the age where she's at now, and the way she's been showing up for the last couple of, I would say, 8 years. She's been really focused on her business, and I think that Mercury in Aquarius, that really is how she presents herself these days. But it's also a sign of how she makes money from her business, because it's the 2nd house relative to the 10th house. What makes Rihanna so magnetic isn't random. It's actually written all over her natal chart. And the same is true for you. Your talents, your timing, your challenges, and life events, they all show up in your natal chart as well. And this is exactly what we explore in my personal astrology readings. I don't just tell you what your placements are, but also how to work with them consciously. If you're curious to understand your own natal chart on a deeper level, you'll find astrology readings in the description box. Use code WELCOME25 at checkout to apply a 25% discount for every first-time customer. Okay, now let's talk about Sect for Rihanna. So we can see that the sun in Rihanna's chart is above the ascendant, meaning that she was born during the day. And so with the sun being above the horizon, this makes the sun her primary luminary, or you could call the sun the light of Sect. With the sun being the light of Sect, that immediately gives us the most positive and the most challenging planet in Rihanna's chart. Now, with Rihanna being born during the day, that means that Jupiter is going to be her most positive planet and Mars is going to be her most challenging planet. And that also makes Saturn less malefic than it could be, so less negative or challenging than Saturn could be. It makes Saturn more so constructive. And that also makes Venus less positive than she could be. She's still a benefic, but for Rihanna, she's the lesser benefic. This shows us extremes, right? So if we are talking about extremes in Rihanna's life, like her most positive life events versus her most negative life events, but also everything that falls in between, right? The gray area we also see within Sect. And I'm going to talk about all of these placements in depth as we move along. Now, Mercury is neutral and joins the party of the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. But here's where things get really interesting. interesting. So, like I said, the sun is the sect in favor. That makes Jupiter the most positive planet and Mars the most negative planet. However, if you're paying attention, let me know in the comments if you're paying attention, okay? Jupiter, the most positive planet for Rihanna, and Mars, the most challenging planet for Rihanna, are actually in a trine aspect to each other by degree, meaning they are both in fire signs, so they make an harmonious aspect to each other. But not only that, Jupiter is actually in the sign of Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and Mars is in the sign of Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. This means that they are in mutual reception. They are both in each other's domicile and also aspecting each other by a trine aspect. So this makes Mars, which is supposed to be her most challenging planet based on Sect, a lot more positive and manageable, because Jupiter is able to provide resources for Mars and Mars is able to provide resources for Jupiter. They are essentially helping each other out, and Jupiter is making Mars less malefic, and Mars also being the ruler of the ascendant for Rihanna places an extra emphasis on Mars as the ruling planet, the planet that actually symbolizes Rihanna as a native. It symbolizes her, who she is, where she's going in life. And then Mars, being placed in the 9th house, she obviously relocated, she traveled overseas. The 9th house and Sagittarius and Jupiter have associations with long distance travel. So Mars, being the ruler of the ascendant, symbolizing Rihanna as a person, being placed in the 9th house shows that her life direction, her life path would take her to a foreign country, a foreign land, a foreign culture. And that's ultimately what happened. And I think that the way that it played out for her so positively is because that Mars is being supported by Jupiter, which is the greater benefic for Rihanna. And Jupiter is also angular, it's placed in the 1st house. So Jupiter is ultimately very resourceful and is able to provide some resources for Mars, which otherwise would be a lot more negative for Rihanna, a lot more challenging than that Mars has been in her life. However, we have seen some of the more negative and challenging manifestations of Mars in Rihanna's life. For example, the abuse that she went through, the physical harm that was done to her, and Jupiter being an aspect to Mars also amplified that and made it a lot more public, made it much more of a global event. So it's really interesting to see that dance between Jupiter and Mars, where yes, Jupiter is able to soften that Mars a bit and make it less challenging, but at the same time, when we are talking about a very challenging event, a very challenging and martial event for Rihanna, Jupiter actually amplified it.
There are a lot of women who've experienced what I did, but not in the public. So it made it really difficult. It's something that nobody wants anybody to know. So here I am, the whole world knowing.
And I think that is also shown by that trine aspect. Trines aren't always positive. They make sure that the energy flows naturally, easily, and harmoniously. Now, in terms of the planets that are contrary to Sect, so the planets that are not on the team of the sun, we've got Saturn, which is the lesser malefic in this case. So Saturn is less challenging than it could be, and Venus being less benefic than she could be. So Venus is less positive than she could. However, I've noticed something so interesting about this. First of all, Venus is also angular, okay? Venus is in the 12th house, but because it's so close to the ascendant, that gives it this sense of angularity, makes it a lot more prominent. But if it was just that, if Rihanna was born with a day chart with Venus by the ascendant, but not receiving any support, then that Venus wouldn't have played out as positively. That Venus has to be supported in some way to be able to deliver some more positive manifestations, So when we look at Mercury in the sign of Aquarius, Mercury is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in Capricorn in its domicile, so Saturn is very strong, very resourceful, resourceful because it's in a sign where it feels at home and where it's able to express its natural energy. So Mercury is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in domicile. And why am I looking at Mercury right now? Because I was talking about Venus. Well, Mercury is making a sextile aspect to Venus, okay? And so what we see here is that Saturn, which is very strong, is able to support Venus indirectly through Mercury. So Saturn doesn't support Venus directly. Saturn supports Mercury, and Mercury, by sextile to Venus, is able to support Venus because Mercury is ruled by Saturn. I hope I'm demonstrating this all right. Like, to me this is so clear. I hope this is also clear for you guys. If you need like more explaining on this, definitely let me know. So Venus being the lesser benefic, being a lot less positive than she could be, she doesn't really have a lot of support except for her being somewhat angular. But Saturn having a lot of resources, because Saturn being in its domicile and Saturn also being on the team of the primary luminary, is able to support Venus indirectly because Saturn is supporting Venus through Mercury. And because Mercury is neutral, Mercury doesn't pick a side. If Venus is like, hey Mercury, I need your help, Mercury is like, okay, well let me borrow some of my resources from Saturn and let me provide them through the sextile to Venus. Because Mercury is ruled by Saturn, so Saturn has the last word. And Mercury is like, hey Saturn, can I borrow some of your resources? And Saturn is like, yeah, I'm resourceful, like I got all you need, so you know, I'm in my home. It's kind of like Saturn is in its own home and you have a lot more resources when you're at home versus being in the home of someone else and you don't have all your usual stuff. So Saturn is able to say, you know what, I'm gonna give you some of my constructive energy and I am going to help you help Venus and make her a lot more positive than she could be and a lot more manageable as well. So what I am really trying to demonstrate here is the concept of Sect and how it plays out very beautifully in Rihanna's chart, and how, yes, we are talking about the most positive and most negative planets, but in between there is this gray area, this middle path, where we see all the possible ranges of manifestations between positive and negative. So I'm definitely not looking at things in a black and white type of way. I'm also not looking at any of these planets in isolation. They are in communication with each other. They are in relationship with each other. So what does this mean interpretively, right? What does this mean in terms of how this has manifested in Rihanna's life? Well, first of all, Venus is the planet of fashion, aesthetics, beauty. And I mean, come on, we all know Rihanna is a fashion icon, okay? She is so fashionable, and there is also a beautiful connection with her mother, which we are going to get into. I'm so excited to talk about her family dynamics. It's insane. But yeah, so we see that Rihanna being a fashion icon is one of the manifestations that I feel like has been made possible by that support indirectly coming through Saturn. Because if Venus would not have had that support from Saturn through Mercury, then she probably wouldn't have been able to express her sense of fashion in that daring way that she does, right? She's really able to also be innovative with her fashion, to even be a little bit weird with it, to go outside of the norm. So we really see that sextile to Mercury in Aquarius and Venus, you know, Venus in Aries, the way she expresses her sense of fashion, it just always seems to be slightly outside of the norm, but still very raw, very fiery and feisty. So that's one of the ways that I really see that Venus being manifested in such a positive way. Also, to kind of go back to her most positive and negative planet, right? So again, that mutual reception, I think I already touched on the interpretive quality of all of this, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. That mutual reception between the ruler of her ascendant and her most positive planet, the greater benefic for Rihanna. We all have a most positive and most negative planet in the chart, but not for everyone are they in mutual reception, meaning that they are supporting each other. And I think that for Rihanna, that has played out when she was still young, when she was 15 years old, which, by the way, we are going to be talking about her whole life story, especially from when she was 15 in the next parts. Okay, so if you want to know more about how all of these things in her life happened, I am going to cover that. Okay, so stay tuned. But I think that not for everyone that suddenly decides to move overseas out of her home country, right? She was 15 years old when she moved out of Barbados to pursue her career, and not just moved to some place nearby, she literally moved overseas. She moved to a foreign country in a foreign culture, which was very different from how she was raised. She has expressed this in interviews.
So after moving to a big city with, basically around strangers, that was the hardest thing for me to cope with at first.
And, for some people, that probably wouldn't have turned out this positively. Like, I don't think there are a lot of people that can say, I moved to a foreign country when I was 15 years old and I didn't get into worst case scenario. Like, for Rihanna, it did not turn out worst case scenario. And I think that also goes to show that Jupiter, Mars being in mutual reception, Jupiter also being in the first house, dealing with Rihanna as a native, the house of the self, but also Jupiter just being angular kind of amplifies Jupiter's positive ability to be able to bring forth a positive manifestation. And then Mars in the ninth, of course, dealing with long distance travel. So as you can see right here, we have the Astrocartography chart for Rihanna, and I just think this is so freaking interesting. All right, so first of all, Rihanna was born in Barbados. So right here we see Barbados, where we can see the red circle with a cross in it. The closest lines to Barbados for Rihanna is her Venus line, also her Neptune, but I would say that Venus is the closest. However, there's not any direct lines going through Barbados. So that Venus line is the closest thing that was activated for Rihanna when she lived in Barbados, and also anytime that she goes back to Barbados, that Venus line is activated. But when Rihanna was 15, she traveled to Connecticut first, and then eventually she lived in New York. And guess which lines run straight through New York and, also close to Connecticut? So first of all, her Mars line, wow, like that is just mind-blowing, because Mars in her natal chart is the ruler of her ascendant, and Mars is a signification of Rihanna, and literally moving to her Mars line is actually insane. But that also activated Mars in her natal chart even more so than it would have been activated if she would have stayed in Barbados. So anytime that she is in this region, and also all the other regions that have Mars lines going through them, because it's not the only region that has Mars, Mars lines. But she moved to New York, and there you go, that Mars line is activated. So for one, this activates that mutual reception in her chart. And I think it also solidifies that natal promise of her relocating. And literally her relocating to her Mars line is actually insane to me. And then of course, Uranus, Saturn being there as well. It really shows that a lot of unexpected things happened as she moved to America. So that's one thing I just wanted to point out. I'm not an expert in astrocartography, but I did notice this and I just wanted to share it with you. With Rihanna's Neptune being conjunct the MC, I really feel like this is such an interesting thing. Neptune can also be associated with fame, the type of fame where it can feel like a fog. And it can really be oftentimes also suffocating. There could be like a sense of deception, a sense of illusion about you when Neptune is associated with your public reputation, where you don't even know what real life is anymore. But we see a lot of celebrities in this day and age with prominent Neptune placements. For Rihanna, Neptune being so close to the MC, we can really see also this sense of glamour, right? Mystique as well. The MC is about your career, your public reputation. And I think that's also why a lot of people that know her as a public figure are often really captivated by her presence. But I think Neptune conjunct the MC also goes to show that the way that the public views her, I don't think that she views herself the same way in her private life. I think that for her as a native, probably the way she feels, and this is just me speculating, like based on what I see in the astrology chart, is that the way that the public perceives her is in a way kind of like an illusion or somewhat of a deception, right? That's a lot of like, she probably feels that a lot of the rumors that are being said about her aren't true. That's not really who she is, that there's this sense of illusion when it comes to her public reputation.
Did you attend any of P. Diddy's parties? You had involved in any of the freak offs? That's crazy.
At first it was funny because I was like, this is insane. But it gets frustrating after a while.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of ignoring it. You know, I'm getting better at doing that.
Yeah.
But not at all. She is one of the sweetest women I've ever met. She's so kind. And we talked about not letting it get in the way because at one point it got to me so much that I got nervous around him.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't even be myself around him anymore.
So have you
Another thing that's really interesting about Rihanna's chart is that she has Saturn Uranus conjunct, but also that she has a Uranus Mars conjunction, right? So you could say that it's actually a triple conjunction, and Neptune being also co-present with this bunch, sudden fame, right? Sudden experiences, kind of surprising turning points are very major in her life. But if we really look at that Saturn Uranus conjunction, I think that conjunction is very interesting, especially with it being in our ninth house, and ninth house dealing with long distance travel and that trip that she made to go live with two producers where she relocated out of her home country, right? That was a very sudden experience. It was definitely not planned. It was a sudden turning point where her whole life changed and the structures of her life changed. And, you know, I feel like that time was also not easy for her. Saturn is also a planet that is associated with business and entrepreneurship, and Rihanna's businesses being all about innovation, being all about inclusivity. Again, we see those same themes, right, as we see with Mercury in Aquarius and ruled by Saturn. The ruler of Mercury is conjunct Uranus, and Uranus is the modern planet that's associated with Aquarius, but also with themes of, you know, going outside of the norm, being eccentric, not fitting into one category. And Uranus as a planet, it wants breakthroughs. It wants to break through the status quo. It wants to completely throw the chess pieces off the chessboard. It wants to completely break the rules. And what we see within Rihanna's business, Saturn being a symbol of one's business, one's entrepreneurship, Uranus being conjunct Saturn, Uranus being that groundbreaking type of energy, and her business has definitely broken the rules. Her business has definitely shaked up the norm. After Rihanna made the bold decisions that she did, and let's not forget that Rihanna has stated that for her, it was normal. It was normal to include multiple sizes for her clothing brand, multiple shades for her makeup brand. But by doing that, she broke the norm because the norm was not like that. And after Rihanna set the pace for this particular theme, a lot of businesses followed after her steps. So again, we see that notion of her being a trendsetter, but also of Rihanna having the audacity to break the norm and then that becoming the new norm, breaking the status quo and then creating a new status quo. That Saturn-Uranus conjunction also speaks to that. Saturn also being about your reality, the constructs and the structures of your life and what you experience of reality. And what Rihanna experienced as her reality, right? The place that she grew up in, the people that she knew that were around her, her family, her friends, her neighborhood, her reality as she knew it was completely shaken up by that energy of Uranus. It was completely shifted when she moved to a foreign country, ninth house, when she made the conscious decision to do something that was also very much outside of the norm. Like, you're 15 years old and you're just literally moving out of the country to go live with two strangers, essentially. That decision putting her on a path of so many unexpected turns, that Uranus conjunct Saturn, like the reality that she once knew was completely shifted. A major turning point happened, and after that, her reality never looked the same.
All my family, they still live in Barbados. Really? Yeah, I just came alone, but I didn't care. I was not looking back. I love my family and I miss them, but I had been dreaming about that moment for my whole life. So it was an amazing opportunity. I grabbed it with both hands,
and I think that really speaks to that Saturn-Uranus conjunction as well. Her reality as she knew it being shaken up by relocating to a foreign country. So let's talk about Rihanna's family dynamics. Now, in this section, I'm mostly going to be talking about the family dynamics between Rihanna and her father and her mother. So she does actually have two brothers, two half sisters, and a half brother, but I'm not going to go over them in this video. So when looking at Rihanna's natal chart and seeing family dynamics from within her natal chart, I look at the MC or the midheaven as being representative of being the authoritarian parent. So the parent that had the most say in Rihanna's upbringing and the parent that had the most authority and was more so seen as a father figure for the native. I watched some interviews about Rihanna's upbringing and her life and her parents, the way she viewed them. And from watching those interviews, I drew the conclusion that I think Rihanna, would see her father as the parent that had the authority within the dynamic. And when I then look at the MC as being representative of Rihanna's father, it definitely plays out, because first thing you'll notice is that, the MC is in Capricorn, so it's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is actually it's not exactly conjunct, but it's in the same sign, and Saturn rules over the MC. And Saturn is also a symbol of the father figure in astrology, so it definitely plays out that she has Saturn, one of the symbols of the father, close to the MC. But then also, more closely conjunct the MC is Neptune. And Rihanna's father actually dealt with addiction and substance abuse. Neptune being a planet that can talk about addiction and substance abuse, Neptune being conjunct the MC being a signification of the father, and also Saturn being a signification of the father, really shows in Rihanna's nativity this theme of her father being absent, but also, dealing with addiction.
Rihanna admitting that her father was a crackhead.
She had a rough childhood growing up in the Caribbean, and not only did she talk about her father's addiction, but she talked about how that really affected her family, really affected her. She said she grew up through school having headaches, and no one knew why she had headaches. They even worried she had a tumor, and that was because she was internalizing a lot of her pain. So when you hear Rihanna sing those songs, that's an outpouring of a lot of what she's been through as a girl.
Neptune is also about, toxic liquids, and her father also had issues with alcohol.
my family broke up because of his addiction.
The sun is also a symbol of the father. So both Saturn and the sun are general symbols of the father in astrology. And the sun is in Pisces. Now, Pisces is also a very Neptunian sign, and Pisces as well can deal with substance abuse, addiction, and mental health issues. So here we see the same kind of theme or topic show up. There's pattern to be recognized here, because the sun is in a sign that is about the same kind of topics that Neptune is about. The usage of alcohol, the abuse of substances, addiction and mental health issues. So we see this pattern show up twice already, and that's a strong indication that this would become a big part of Rihanna's life and that this would become a manifestation of the astrology. When you see a pattern show up more than once, it's more likely to manifest. Now, conjunct Saturn, there's Uranus, and Uranus is conjunct Mars. Saturn is also conjunct Mars because Saturn and Uranus are together. Uranus is actually kind of sandwiched in between Saturn and Mars. And Rihanna has also stated in interviews that her father was physically abusive with her mother. And so growing up, she would have seen violence coming from her father.
Because you watched him do some bad things to your mom.
Yeah, I witnessed a lot as a child in my household.
Was he violent?
Yes, he was.
Something that's very interesting about the sun being in Pisces as well. The sun in Pisces, it talks about her father essentially being an alcoholic, being an addict, and that indicated a dynamic within her family, and it also indicated a part of the story of her life and events that occurred in her life. But when we then look at the sun from a character or personality expression, or when we talk about it in the context of Rihanna and her actions and her behavior and her choices. In the interview that she did with Oprah, when she talked about the abuse that she went through with Chris Brown, her boyfriend at the time, she connected the dots to the experiences that she had with her father growing up.
You made peace with your father.
Made peace with my father.
And then you were able to make peace with Chris.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you realized the connection between what your father had done and what Chris had done.
Yes.
And in that interview, she was still able to find forgiveness. And it was also that through the healing that she had to go through after being abused by her partner, during that healing journey is when she connected the dots to her childhood experiences and seeing her mother being abused by her father. And in that interview, she was still able to not only forgive her father and forgive Chris Brown, but also still being able to say that her father was an amazing father, and that regardless of what she's seen growing up, she still saw him as a great dad.
I was able to realize, my father was probably one of the best fathers in the world. He taught me everything. And as awful as he was to my mom, at times, it didn't compare to how great he was as a father.
And also later when, her father passed away and she was asked in an interview if she felt sad about her father not being able to see her kids grow up, that the way that she raises her children, some of that has been inspired by the way her dad raised her.
Always dreamed of what type of grandfather he would be to them because of the favorite parts of my dad. I think it prepared me for having two boys.
So yes, they had problems, and yes, her father wasn't always the best father to her, but Rihanna as a little girl, Rihanna as, her inner child, still sees her father as, daddy and as the man that raised her. And there were problems and issues within that dynamic, but there were probably also good times and a lot of things that she took away from that experience that she didn't experience as, so bad. And that is also a character trait of Pisces. Pisces is able to be a victim and still forgive. Pisces is able to be a victim and still be compassionate, and still hold space for that person, which can sometimes not be a good thing, that can sometimes be taken out of proportion and can lead to Stockholm syndrome. But for Rihanna, I don't think that has manifested for her in that way. I think that it was a very hard pill to swallow and something very difficult because she loved her dad so much, but she could also remember the good things about him and see the good in him, and in that healing journey forgive her father. But with these planets being associated with her father, we've got Neptune, Uranus, Mars, Saturn, the Sun, all being associated with her father, really shows this picture that it's not just a black or white experience that she had with her father. There were good things about him, there were bad things about him, and a lot of lessons learned regarding that relationship with him. Now, Rihanna actually has the lot of the father conjunct her natal Mercury. Is that not amazing? Like, does that not blow your mind that she actually has the lot of the father conjunct Mercury? And Mercury, of course, is ruled by Saturn. So the lot of father would also be ruled by Saturn. And Saturn is, of course, conjunct Uranus, conjunct Mars, and in a wider conjunction to Neptune and the MC. So this again kind of leads us to the same conclusions and also confirms that the MC is a significant of Rihanna's father in her nativity. Now, when we look at the synastry between Rihanna's father and Rihanna, I do want to say before I talk about their synastry that I wasn't able to find a time of birth for Rihanna's father. Even his date of birth, I couldn't confirm because there were some articles that said August and then other articles that said a different date, but I could find more articles saying August, and also there was an Instagram post of a fan congratulating Rihanna's father on his birthday. So I decided to take the August birthday of Rihanna's father as being his date of birth. If anyone knows if he's actually born in August, then let us know in the comments. But with that date that I found in August, that makes the inner circle Rihanna's father. Okay, and the outer circle is Rihanna. So is this not freaking interesting that Rihanna's father has the sun in Leo? Also, for Rihanna's father, Pluto is conjunct the sun, but also that the father of Rihanna's Mercury placement is actually opposite Rihanna's Mercury. And remember where the lot of father is placed, it's placed right here. In Rihanna's natal chart, her lot of father is conjunct Mercury, and Rihanna and her father have a Mercury opposition going on in their synastry. Is that not interesting? So I think it's just beautiful how family dynamics work and how we can see the DNA of our family dynamics in the astrology as well. I have seen some things here and there that at one point Rihanna had to sue her father. I don't remember exactly what it was, so don't quote me on this. But there was a legal type of conflict between her and her father. Allegedly, I don't know what exactly happened there. I wasn't there, so I can't say. But I did see some videos on YouTube talking about Rihanna and her father going through some type of legal battle.
Rihanna is suing her father, Ronald Fenty, and Fenty Entertainment over claims that he's using her brand and his relationship to her to launch his own business.
To whatever extent, I didn't really look much into that because I don't think that Rihanna wants her father and the relationship between her and her father to be remembered in that way. So I don't want to kind of talk about that too much, but it is interesting to see that they have Mercury opposite Mercury in their synastry, and that opposition of, really standing opposite each other. And yeah, so there's a lot more interesting stuff about that, but we're not going to really go into it here. Now, one thing that's not as visible here, I don't know why we can't really see Mars, but the Mars placements of Rihanna's father is right here. You can see that little arrow right there. So here's one thing that's so interesting, okay? Rihanna herself has Mars in Sagittarius. Rihanna's mother also has Mars in Sagittarius, and Rihanna's dad also has Mars in Sagittarius. So these three, they all have Mars in Sagittarius. Isn't that crazy? Let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you find interesting about their synastry. I would love to know your perspective on it. I can't really go as in depth because this video is already getting too long. I really would love to see if you guys also notice some interesting things about these synastry charts between Rihanna's father and her mother. So let me know down in the comments. Now, looking at Rihanna and her mother, oh my god, this is also just so interesting. So first of all, I look at her IC as being a signification of her mother, as she most likely would have been the caretaking parent from Rihanna's point of view. The IC is ruled by the moon, which is in Aries, conjunct Venus, and the ascendant. Now, Rihanna, in my opinion, does look most like her mom. And just in general, having the moon conjunct the ascendant or the moon in the first house in astrology can indicate the native looking like her mother or looking like his mother. And for Rihanna, I feel like she definitely looks like her mother. Like, can you see this picture of them? Don't they look like each other? Like, for real? Like, obviously, she's her mother, right? But I think she looks more like her mother than she looks like her father. So in terms of physical appearance, she does resemble her mother, in my opinion. But that's just a surface level of physical appearance. I also feel like she has adopted some of her mother's personality. Rihanna's moon is, again, also just like Venus, in a sextile with Mercury. And it just amazes me that Rihanna's communication style also kind of resembles her mother's.
I don't want him to get lazy and distracted.
I even feel like her accent comes more so closely from her mother. And as I'm going to point out in the next slide when we look at their synastry, Rihanna's mother's Mercury is also in an exact sextile to Rihanna's Mercury. So that's interesting because we just talked about how Rihanna's father's Mercury was opposite Rihanna's Mercury. Well, the Mercury of Rihanna's mother is sextiling Rihanna's Mercury. So on a basic level, communication between Rihanna and her mother went much more easily than communication between Rihanna and her father. But there's also a deeper level to that. Rihanna has also said multiple times that her sense of fashion, her love for fashion, her love for beauty, her love for makeup also came from her mother. That her mother was her first example of fashion, of beauty, of aesthetic.
My entire concept of beauty came from her. I was always so intrigued by her. I wanted to dress like her. I wanted to look like her. I wanted to do my hair like her, do my makeup like her. She was a silk skirt for beauty products and perfume and makeup. It's so weird that it's come full circle that all of these ventures are things that I've extended my creativity to, and it has been a part of my brand overall. So I learned from the best. I had the best teacher, my mom.
And so the ruler of the IC being a signification of the mother, and the ruler of the IC, the moon, being conjunct Venus, really shows this theme as well. Now, the moon is a general signification of the mother, but Venus can also be a general signification of the mother, just like the sun is a general signification of the father, and Saturn is a general signification of the father. The same goes with moon and Venus. So I just think that it's very interesting because if you are just learning the technique of seeing family dynamics in the astrology chart, this would be a very easy to understand example because the general symbols of the father and the mother are very closely connected to each other. I actually forgot to mention as well that for Rihanna's father, the sun and Saturn, which are both symbols of the father, are also in aspect with each other. They are sextile. And the moon being square the IC, I think this also really speaks to Rihanna moving away from her homeland, moving away from her mother, and her missing her mother. She spent a long time not being with her mother, and I think that they had a good relationship. So being away from her mother must have been very difficult for her, and she has expressed that missing her mother was one of the most difficult things about her life. Now, in terms of Rihanna's lot of the mother, it is placed at 13 degrees of Aries. Like, when I saw this, like, literally, my jaw dropped, okay? The lot of the mother is literally, like, right here. Isn't that crazy? It's conjunct Venus. So this really confirms what we're kind of talking about here, you know? It really confirms that the IC is a signification of Rihanna's mother in her natal chart. But I want you to kind of remember this lot of the mother. I want you to remember that the lot of Rihanna's mother is at 13 degrees of Aries. I want you to remember that as we look at their synastry. So here you can see the synastry of Rihanna and her mother. Also, I love this image of them, by the way. You can really see here as well the red lipstick, right? That Rihanna loves to wear. She speaks a lot about her sense of fashion and beauty coming from her mother. So here we can really see that as as a visual. So here you can see Rihanna's mother on the inner wheel and Rihanna again on the outer wheel. So are you seeing what I'm seeing? Like, bruh. I mean, come on. Are you not seeing this? What is this stellium in Aries? Come on now. So Rihanna's mother has a whole Aries stellium, okay? Just like Rihanna has her most prominent planets in Aries, Rihanna's mother also has a bunch of Aries planets, okay? She has Saturn in Aries, Venus in Aries, just like Rihanna has Venus in Aries. Rihanna's mother also has the Sun in Aries, she has Mercury in Aries, and Mercury is then also sextiling Rihanna's Mercury, but the Mercury placement of Rihanna's mother is where? At 12 degrees of Aries. And where was the lot of the mother? It's literally at 13 degrees of Aries. So Rihanna's lot of the mother is conjunct Rihanna's mother's natal Mercury. Isn't that crazy? But yeah, I think this also very much speaks to that feeling that Rihanna has that, you know, she resembles her mother so much. They both have Venus in Aries. The son of Rihanna's mother, so Monica, I'm going to refer to her as Monica moving forward because that's her name. So Monica's son is also conjunct Rihanna's ascendant. It's so fascinating to me. And then also Monica's Saturn is conjunct Rihanna's Jupiter. I feel like, and this is something I've also noticed more often, Jupiter is a benefic, and in ancient astrology, benefics are said to be good doers, whereas malefics are said to be evildoers. And, you know, life is not black and white like that, but it gives us a lot of interpretive principles. So what we can kind of see here with Monica's Saturn being in Aries, that the hardships that Rihanna's mother has been through and the difficulties of Monica's life, Rihanna's Jupiter has kind of gone over those difficulties and kind of, it's almost like Rihanna's Jupiter placement has softened that Saturn experience of her mother. It's kind of like Jupiter comes in to sweep away all the hardship and makes it a little bit better. And again, I think there's a very interesting thing there with their Saturn Jupiter conjunction in their synastry. So again, if you guys want to talk about that in the comments, let me know if you have any more insights on that placement, on those placements in specific, because I wish I could go into it more deeply in this video, but this video is really already getting so long. I don't want it to be like 3 hours, okay? So I have to kind of put a stop on how in depth I go with this. But another thing that I do want to mention is, again, Rihanna's mother also has Mars in Sagittarius, just like Rihanna's father. Oh, just like Rihanna herself. The three of them all have Mars in Sagittarius. They're not all close to each other by degree, but they're all in the same sign. I find that so fascinating. Okay, so before we wrap up this video, I kind of want to give a little sneak peek into the next video of this series, which is going to be about Rihanna's major live events and how everything kind of turned out for her. In the next video of this series, we are really going to be taking a look at Rihanna's timeline and her chronology. But I wanted to give a little sneak peek for you into the next video, because ever since Rihanna decided to focus more on her business and not necessarily leave the music industry behind, but take a step back from it, there's been so many people who are kind of just disappointed, but also pressuring her, putting a lot of pressure on her to make new music and to release another album. I mean, I get it, her music is amazing, but looking at her astrology, I don't think that she is ever really going to be the same musical artist that she has been. I think that she probably will release another album. She has stated time and time again that she's working on that. So the possibility is definitely there that she could release another album. And actually in the next video where I go more into her Zodiacal releasing, I do want to kind of see if I can maybe predict or pinpoint when that's gonna be. So I could be answering the question from an astrological predictive standpoint of when she's going to release her next album. If we want to answer the question, when is she gonna do that, we first have to ask, is she going to do that? And I do think that she is, but I don't think that she's going to be the musician that she was. I don't think that, the big tours and the big performances, I think that that has been something of the past. And I'm going to kind of explain why I think that and what I mean when I say this. So, zodiacal releasing is a timing technique. It kind of shows the major chapters of your life. It shows the major chapters of your life, but it also shows the sub periods or like the sub headlines. It kind of shows the headlines of your life, which is level 1, and then the sub headlines, level 2, the paragraphs, level 3. It's kind of like if your life would be a book, level 1 would be the major chapters of that book. So in the next video of this series, we're going to go more into the level 2, level 3, level 4 periods. But for this section, I just want to mention the level 1 to be able to look at her life in kind of a broad point of view and to really zoom out and see what the major theme has been for Rihanna, but also in terms of her fate and her life direction. Because zodiacal releasing is based on the lot of fortune and the lot of spirit. Because Rihanna has the lot of fortune in Taurus, this means that Rihanna's peak periods are in the fixed signs. So in this technique, I am releasing from the lot of spirit, and whenever the lot of spirit is released to a fixed sign, so Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, that's when Rihanna experiences peak periods in her life, which basically means that those periods are going to be the most active in Rihanna's life. Those periods are just going to be booked and busy. And it's not necessarily always that peak periods are good periods of life, but more so that these periods are when you do a lot of things or a lot of important things in your life, things that really stand out. That if you were to write a book about your life, those peak periods are really going to stand out as major periods of life. And it's also kind of a way of dividing your life into pieces. And for Rihanna, the astrology plays out as it always does. It's almost like astrology is real. So what we see here is that from the time that Rihanna was 11 years old to when she was 25 years old is when she would have been in a level 1 Aries period. This 15-year period is not the peak period. This 15-year period from age 11 to age 25 is a preparatory phase. It is the period that comes before the peak period. So this period of Rihanna's life was preparatory. From the grand scheme of things, if we zoom out and we look at Rihanna's life from a bird's eye point of view, we can see that from the age 11 to 25, Rihanna was preparing for something. She was preparing for her peak periods. So from a broad point of view, from age 11 to 25, she was preparing herself. Well, what was she preparing for? We're gonna talk about it, okay? But first of all, I want to really emphasize here that Rihanna moved to Connecticut and eventually to New York when she was 15 years old. So this was during this preparatory phase period. From the age 15 to 25, she was really in the midst of being a celebrity and being a musical artist and writing a lot of albums. In this period, she literally released 7 albums because the album Anti was released in 2016. So this was when she was actually in her peak period. And I'm going to talk about her peak period in a moment, but I just think it's so interesting that a lot of people refer to Anti as being Rihanna's best work and her releasing that album in her peak period. But literally, she released 7 albums in a preparatory phase period. So, looking at things from a surface level, you would think that this whole area of her life, of her moving out of Barbados and becoming a musician, becoming a celebrity, releasing 7 albums, that is a peak period for Rihanna. But really, it's not. If we look at it from a broad point of view, there were peak periods within this level 1 preparatory phase, but from a broad perspective, it was a preparatory phase. It wasn't a peak period. I don't think that her real purpose was in being a celebrity. I think that her real life purpose, because again, the lot of fortune deals with destiny, it deals with your fate, it deals with what is predetermined for you. It essentially is about your life purpose. It's about the things that you are bound to go through. It's your natal promise. It's the promise that you made prior to birth. It's essentially your soul contract. And where is a lot of fortune placed in Rihanna's natal chart? In the 2nd house. And so from that broad bird's eye view, her life purpose really has to deal with Rihanna becoming a billionaire. Why do I say that? Because she did a lot of philanthropic work where, she used a lot of that money to kind of give back. And also the businesses that she builds billion-dollar businesses, but those businesses, they have meaning. They have shifted the status quo. They have shifted the consensus. So there's something very purposeful about that. And I feel like Rihanna definitely, enjoys her luxury and she enjoys her wealth, but she's also all about sharing that and putting that money to good use. She has founded her own foundation. She's done a lot of humanitarian work. She's stood up a lot for global education, women's rights, people's rights all over the world. And so a lot of that wealth that she has created has really been put to good use, or at least the intention has been there. But from a broader perspective, when we talk about fate and destiny, she's been put in this position of becoming so well known that she now has a certain type of influence. And that influence was created in this preparatory phase.
I was able to break into a creative industry, right? Through music. And I always say music was the thing that got the attention. But God had other plans for me, and I was able to create in ways that were like very sincere and genuine or organic and authentic to the things that I love. So it doesn't even feel like a job.
This preparatory phase, this phase of her becoming Rihanna, becoming the celebrity, becoming the musician that she is, has led her to becoming the business owner that she is today. Because when she then got into her peak period, her level 1 peak period, and this area of life was activated, this is when she really established her business and when she became a billionaire. That happened within that peak period. Her being a celebrity was essentially preparing her for becoming a multi-business owner, building businesses that are worth billions of dollars and becoming quite wealthy. Her, with that wealth, putting it to good use, I think that's a big part of her purpose. But also in her level 1 peak period, that's also when Rihanna's children were born, or at least the first 2. Not the third, but the first 2 children were within the level 1 peak period. Everything that happened in the level 1 preparatory phase was prepping her for the peak period. And in a lot of ways, that's true, because even the relationship with Chris Brown, which happened in the preparatory period, she learned a lot from that relationship. And I think that had she not gone through those lessons, then maybe she wouldn't have had the tools to be in the relationship that she's in now and to kind of have a successful relationship with the father of her children. But in terms of like her overall life purpose, and just her career as well, her career is so much bigger than just her releasing albums. It's so much bigger than just being a musician. And don't get me wrong, she's a good musician and we love her music. I also want, another album, but I'd rather her follow her life purpose. And if her life purpose is not aligned anymore with that type of culture, with those types of people in that industry. And let's be real, like that music industry is not that profitable. There's a lot of these artists that are actually broke, and I think that Rihanna also realized that she's better off building a business that is a lot more profitable and that she can do a lot more with, and she can still show up as a public figure but also have a lot more autonomy. So again, what I really want to emphasize here is that Rihanna was in a preparatory period when she made all of those amazing songs, when she went on those tours, when she did those concerts, when she did those iconic performances. Those were all preparatory periods. The level 1 peak period is also, by the way, when she did the Super Bowl performance, right? I mean, of all of her performances, is that not the most iconic one? But that was also a very busy time for Rihanna. I think that she would have also experienced that as very stressful and much of a peak period experience. And of course, within these level 1 periods, there's a bunch of smaller periods. So there's a lot more to the story, a lot more details, and we are going to get into the details of that in the next video of this series. I'm so excited to share that with you. So I also kind of want to use this time right here to let you know that this is a 4-part series and that there will be another Rihanna video coming up about her entire lifetime, where we're going to look at transits, profections, zodiacal releasing, and stuff of that nature. So when you see all of those dates within the level 1 period, all of those level 2 dates, we are going to talk about a lot of those, okay? So it's going to be very interesting as well. Also, if you're studying zodiacal releasing yourself, then I think the next video is going to be really great for having kind of a chart example. Another thing that I also think is so interesting is that when she was in that level 1 period, that preparatory period, from age 11 to age 25, actually 11 to age 26 more so, it also kind of feels like that Aries was again that much more activated. Like I also showcased with the astrocartography, where it kind of seems like her relocating to a location that has her Mars line going through it. It's kind of like that Mars is kind of activated. But then also here we see with zodiacal releasing Aries, the sign of Aries being activated, and that again tying back into that mutual reception, the Venus in Aries, the Moon in Aries, the ascendant. It's kind of like in that preparatory phase, the Aries sector of Rihanna's chart was activated. And then as she moved into the level 1 peak period of Taurus, her second house was activated, which contains the lot of fortune. So it's not just a peak period, like Rihanna's level 1 peak period of Taurus is not just a peak period, it's the peak period where the lot of spirit is released all the way to the lot of fortune. So that especially makes it a very important and significant peak period, okay? In the level 1 peak period of Taurus, Rihanna has done a lot of amazing things, and I think that a lot of people don't actually give her credit for everything that she's done after she stepped back from the music industry. That's really where she's done a lot of purposeful, meaningful things. And so from a broad point of view, I think that there's a lot of purpose for her to be found in her entrepreneurial venture. So that's probably why music is not in the forefront of her mind, because she wants to make an impact. She wants to put her money to good use. She wants to essentially leave an impact on the world, and she has done so. Even if we just look at that from the point of her business being so all-inclusive, she has really shifted the consensus, the status quo, when it comes to the makeup industry, when it comes to the fashion industry, including all shapes, including all sizes, including all skin tones. That now has become much more of a norm, whereas it really wasn't before she made those bold decisions. What makes Rihanna so magnetic isn't random, it's actually written all over her natal chart. And the same is true for you. Your talents, your timing, your challenges, and life events, they all show up in your natal chart as well. And this is exactly what we explore in my personal astrology readings. I don't just tell tell you what your placements are, but also how to work with them consciously. If you're curious to understand your own natal chart on a deeper level, you'll find astrology readings in the description box. Use code WELCOME25 at checkout to apply a 25% discount for every first-time customer. This has been part 1 of the Astrology of Rihanna series. If you would like to see the rest of the upcoming episodes and support this channel, click the subscribe button down below. In the meanwhile, let me know in the comments, do you share any placements with Rihanna or have aspects to her chart? You can also check out the description box to explore my offers and get to know Transformative Tarot. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon.